welcome back. To add more flesh to the discourse of the 63rd Independence Anniversary commemoration of Nigeria, let's now turn to another elder statesman and a former presidential aide, Tanko Yakasai. Good to have you here on Arise News. My first question to you is that did we actually fight for our independence in the true words, save for constitutional changes by former colonial power Britain? Remember the Littleton, Macpherson constitutions and the like. Could that partly explain why leaders often have their way at public expense over time in Nigeria?
No, there was real struggle for independence in Nigeria. And the struggle was led by three different leaders. First by Dr. Herbert Macaulay, who was succeeded by Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, and followed by Chief Obafemi Awolowo, and then by Sir Ahmadu Bello, and Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, and then Mother Amini Kano. So it was a struggle that started largely from the southern part of the country, led by Dr. Herbert Macaulay. Dr. Herbert Macaulay was the leader of the NCNC, and Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe was his secretary. But NCNC was largely a southern party, so they needed a participation by the North, which has more than 50% of the total population and 2/3 of the landmass of the country. The result was that there was NPC, which was known as Northern People's Congress. It has some opposition parties led by Northern Elements Progressive Union, NEPU, the Middle Belt People's Party, or UMBC actually, United Middle Belt Congress, Borno's Movement, and other organizations. But the major party in the North at that time was the Northern People's Congress. Other parties constituted the opposition group. Now, when the NCNC was formed, it was largely located in the southern part of the country. That cannot give the party nationwide character and support. The result was that there was a formation known as Northern People's Congress, which was the major political party in northern Nigeria, and it had some opposition parties like Northern Elements Progressive Union, NEPU, and United Middle Belt Congress, UMBC. There were also smaller organizations like Borno Youth Movement, Ilorin Telakaparapo, and a few others. That was the beginning of the struggle for independence of Nigeria. But that division has led to lack of cohesion, particularly in the northern part of the country. The result was that parties in the north had to align themselves with one southern-based political party or the other. UMBC, which was largely located in the north central state, central and Northern Elements Progressive Union, NEPU, which was part of, spread in other parts of the north, constituting the major political opposition to the MPC. Then the opposition parties were also divided into two. The NEPU was in alliance with the NCNC, which was mainly in eastern part of the country, and the Action Group, which was dominated mainly by the Yorubas from the western part of the country. So that was how the struggle for independence was fought. But after the formation of different alliances between parties in the north and the parties in the south, NEPU was allied to the NCNC and UMBC was allied to the Action Group. But eventually they all came together and agreed on independence for the whole country. That was how the struggle for independence was fought.
All right.
You want me to continue?
Okay, Mr. We want to say, let me pick it up from, we had a discussion with Pa Debanjo, and he mentioned the myriads of problems plaguing Nigeria. And these problems probably stopping Nigeria from achieving greatness. But he mentioned the inequality that favors the North in terms of population, in terms of geographical equity, so to speak. And several political scientists share this particular view that Nigeria is leaning more. Nigeria favors the North as against the imbalance we see with the South. Talk to us, please.
Well, that had to do with the way the British colonial masters were able to conquer Nigeria. If you remember, the British conquered the southern part of the country first, and it took some years before they crossed over to the north. And even when after crossing over to the north, it took them some years to complete the conquest of the north, because the north is the largest part of the country, constituting 2/3 of the total land mass of Nigeria, and more than 50% of the population of the country. So to get these people together and align them with the southern parties and get them to agree on the issue of independence posed a problem of its own because of the fear of domination. Northerners largely were afraid of southern-based political parties because Southerners were more advanced in Western education, and therefore Northerners saw the issue of independence as giving power to the South to the exclusion of the North. The result was that a lot of Northerners were hesitant to join forces with the Southern politicians and struggle for independence together. It took time before the two sides come to an understanding and reach an agreement to fight together for independence. That was how the whole thing started. And that was why we had a problem at the beginning of the struggle for independence for Nigeria. But after some negotiations and discussions among the leaders, a kind of understanding was reached whereby the leaders eventually came together and agreed to fight together for independence for the country.
All right, Alhaji Yakasai, the other part of my question is very simple. A lot of people claim that the North probably are the ones holding Nigerians from fully expressing their full potentials. Do you agree with that particular statement?
What I forgot to tell you is that the British first conquered southern Nigeria, and it took them some years before they were able to conquer northern Nigeria. So Nigeria as a whole was not conquered at the same time. It was conquered on different occasions. So the struggle to get unity of the country took some time. It was spearheaded first by the doyen of Nigerian nationalism, Dr. Herbert Macaulay, a Yoruba man from Lagos. But when he was struggling to reach out to the North, unfortunately, he fell sick by malaria attack. It happened when he and his party, the NCNC, were on tour of northern part of the country. His team were therefore decided to rush back to the south to look for medical attention for him. It was thereafter that also a discussion or contact started again between the north and the south. By that time, the two major political parties formed in the southern part of the country, the NCNC and the Action Group, took roots in southern part of Nigeria. To get them to be accepted in the northern part of the country was not an easy task because of fear of changing white domination by southern domination. Nationalists from different parts of the country started contact with one another, as a result of which an understanding was reached to work together for independence for the country.
Very good.
Is he coming?
Yes, we heard you, sir. Interesting perspective on the historical aspect of the independence movement then. But Alhaji Yakasai, I'd like us to come to contemporary times now. There's been much conversation about leadership being Nigeria's major problem over time, but what about the followership? Are we doing enough as a people, irrespective of our ethnic configuration, to hold our leaders accountable?
Well, unfortunately or unfortunately, Nigeria is made up of many different ethnic groups, many of which were never in contact with one another. So from the onset, there was a problem of lack of confidence and trust. It took some time before we were able to understand each other and agree to work together. That gave the British an opportunity to play their known role of divide and rule. And therefore they incited one section of the country against the other. The most important point they stressed was that southern part of the country was more advanced in Western education than the northern part of the country. And those who were opposed to the unity of the country incited some northern leaders that independence will mean replacing British colonial rule with southern domination of Nigeria. It took a lot of efforts and struggle by patriotic northerners to convince their fellow compatriots to understand the significance of unity in the country as a prerequisite for the struggle for independence of the country. That took a lot of time, but eventually the country was able to overcome that difficulty, and we were not united again. We now came to an agreement for us to fight for independence for the country against British colonial rule.
All right, sir. Alhaji Yakasai, there is a saying that
Yes.
the youths are the future of tomorrow. And as it stands, we know that the Not Too Young bill has been passed into law. You look at that, how can we maximize this buoyant youth population to help drive change? Since most of the population here in Nigeria are leaning towards the youth than any other demographic. How can we use that to our advantage?
Well, thank God that we are making a very good effort and we are succeeding in educating Nigerians of the importance of national unity. And youth, being the bigger portion of the population, are in the forefront of this struggle for the unity and education of Nigerian population. I think we should be grateful to God that by and large, through Western education, our younger generation are now better educated, and therefore they appreciate the importance of national unity and also for development of the country. Yes?
All right, sir. That's a very good analogy. Now, let's talk on a quite touchy issue here, quite sensitive. The Nigerian Constitution does not support a state within a state, yet agitation on secession by non-state actors is causing challenges in the Southeast currently. I'd like your view. Is a policy of engagement enough to reduce these agitations? And you seem the ghost of the Civil War is still with us, whether we like it or not.
It is true that the ghost of the Civil War is still with us. But that ghost is now superficial. 99% of Nigerians now are now committed to the national unity of Nigeria, and those of them who are not in favor of national unity are insignificant minority in the country. We are in a democracy where votes counts. Younger elements are better educated now. They are in the forefront of the appreciation of the importance of national unity for the progress and development of the country. They are now in the forefront in the fight for the unity and development of the country. With that being assured, we now can see that largely more than 90% of Nigerians are now fully committed to the unity of the country and the progress and development of the nation. What we are lacking now is a good program articulated by the political parties for development of the country, particularly economic development of the country. But as we are struggling more and more people will come to understand the need for the unity of the country, without which the country cannot make the desired progress and achieve greatness.
All right, Alhaji Yakasai.
Yes.
Some would disagree with this national unity you're preaching right now, understanding that they will say that Nigeria is looking more even fragmented than ever before along ethnic and religious lines, that politicians have driven the wedge so deep that we are always constantly reminded that we are different, even though we are one nation. How do we come together and see ourselves as one Nigeria and not as people from southern extraction, northern extraction, and the likes, or people from a religious background or not? Talk to us about this.
I think as we stand today in Nigeria, those who are preaching the kind of sentiment you are expressing constitute an insignificant minority of the population. And in a democracy where the majority decide the fate of the country, majority of Nigerians are committed to the unity of Nigeria, and they understand that without unity, there will be no progress and development in Nigeria. And what everybody now is yearning for is progress and development, so that the problem that is bedeviling the country can be overcome through unity and progressive development.
Very good, sir. Now, let's talk about let's talk about the issue of restructuring. It's been reverberating every now and then when it comes to a national discourse. Is that a fail-proof plan to true nationhood and national development where no region is left behind? What are your thoughts there, sir?
You will be disappointed to hear that people who still have these views that we are expressing constitute an insignificant minority in Nigeria today. Majority of Nigerians are now for unity, and they understand that for Nigeria to be great, we have to come together, Nigerians, and work together to be able to achieve greatness, just like other countries were able to do. There's no other way of achieving greatness than getting people to commit themselves to unity and working together on a common program for development and progress.
All right, Alhaji Yakasai, I want to get your take on the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Pa Adebajo also mentioned that it is a document fraught with several inconsistencies and irregularities. And if we want to have a great nation, there must be a massive tinkering to that particular policy document, lest Nigeria will keep moving around in circles. What's your take about the Constitution that governs us here in Nigeria?
Chief Adebanjo is my good friend for many years, over 70 years. I know him to be consistent on the views you quoted him to be advocating. But with due respect, I will say that those views are no longer fashionable in Nigeria.
No, but if you say that, he has actually pulled out, or he has actually probably reviewed several lacunas and loopholes within the Constitution that if the way it is being set up, he said it was the military that gave us that particular Constitution, and it was not the people, like the first stanza of the Constitution reads, we the people unanimously came together to actually draw this Constitution. That cannot be far from the truth.
Well, I know that my good friend Chief Adebanjo is now listening to me. What I advise him to do is to come out with his program and ask for a national referendum and make this his proposal as a basis of the national referendum and allow Nigerians freedom to vote according to their conscience in support of his own propositions or against it.
But that was already done, because when we had that discussion, we established that in 2014, some of the best minds in Nigeria, well over 400 of them, came together under the National Confab to actually address this particular issue. But nothing was done of it, as the former president, Goodluck Jonathan, handed to right now the former president, Buhari. They literally just tossed that particular document aside.
No, that document was drawn up by a limited number of people. I was one of those who advocated that document or those views contained in that document should be made subject of national referendum and allow Nigerians to decide one way or the other on the issue. The only way to go about it is for Nigerians to vote. And this is the way democracy is governed. So we can only solve this problem by presenting the issue to the public, to Nigerians, and allow them freedom to exercise their franchise and make their choice one way or the other. And I appeal to my good friend, Chief Ayo Adebanjo, to join me in appealing for a national referendum to decide on this issue once for all.
All right, sir. So to a large extent, we've been talking about unity and the need for that in Nigeria's political space, as it were. But I'd like your thoughts on this. Since the intervention of the military over time, would you say to a large extent that has encouraged unity in Nigeria or otherwise?
Well, they call military rule aberration. It's not democratic. The only way of getting the public or Nigerian population to express their views is through national referendum. And this is the reason why I'm asking for a national referendum on any contentious issues of national unity, so that the Nigerians will be given the opportunity to decide for themselves one way or the other.
All right, I want to say many thanks to you, Alhaji Tanko
On the issue.
Yakasai, an elder statesman, for joining us on this very auspicious day as Nigeria celebrates her 63rd independence.